What exactly is the Jewish problem? Is it genocide, their rights to self-defense, envy, bigotry, tribalism? No. The problem is that no one, and I mean no one, including the Jews, know what Jews are and what their role is in the world, or that they even have one. How can the oldest surviving grouping of humans in the history of the planet not know who they are? I mean, they're a race, right? Because if your mom's a Jew, you're a Jew. But actually, there were times in history where if your father was Jewish, you were also Jewish. And clearly, all you have to do is take one look at Jews and see they're a hodgepodge of races. That's because they're religion, right? Wrong. The majority who identify as Jews are secular. And the ones you're probably most aware of are strongly anti-religious. Fine, they're a state, like the US, or a legal entity like Canada. But more Jews live outside of Israel than inside Israel. So what are those Jews? You see the problem? Every definition is a contradiction. You know, they're pacifists and they're warmongers. They're capitalist exploiters and they're revolutionary communists. They only keep to themselves, and yet they threaten racial purity through intermarriage. They killed Christ and they invented Christianity. They're the chosen people mentality, and they have this inferiority complex. Basically, we have an undefined, identity-conflicted human grouping making up less than 0.02% of the world's population, who somehow manages to draw to itself a disproportionate amount of attention and influence, enough to impact the entire human network and all of its systems, for better and for worse. And we don't really know who they are. What are Jews? Why do we feel the way we do about it? The Jews are the hubs. For as long as we've collected population stats, no other grouping comes even close to its constant degree distribution throughout the network. But that in itself is not proof, unless, of course, there's other evidence that they exclusively and consistently performed the same analogous function as the hubs. So did they? See, from the time we first became a complex system called civilization, the history of the Jews has been one of successive invasions, exiles, captivity, genocide, and generally forced mixture into the expanding empires of the region. While other people stayed put when their borders and national names changed, the Jews were never allowed to isolate in their lands for long. Whenever the system grew, they were scattered, carrying with them a cohesive community connected around mutual support and centered around an educational system all about their responsibility in relation to others. Prime Minister, steward, and distributor of resources. Moses, adopted prince, liberator of humanity. The Babylonian exile, Daniel, Prime Minister. And Mordecai, protector of the king's life and liberator. Not the king, not the principle of expansion and separation, rather the principle of cohesion and connection, whose only job is taking care of the needs of the kingdom's parts. The Jew function. As the Roman Empire swallowed up the small networks, nations around the Mediterranean, Jews were pushed to the centers of the New World. As the empire recedes, they find themselves restricted just about anywhere by laws preventing integration, owning property, working in almost all professions. What's left? They're relegated to being tax and rent collectors for kingdoms and governments. Over time, money lending and financing national projects. It really was the needs and natural suspicion of those systems in those countries that placed them as the builders of an international system of finances and trade that carried with it the spread of resources and ideas. That was their role, and that's still the case today. We still feel that Jews dominate the networks that inform and connect us. I mean, look around you. Hollywood, social media, the arts, news, financial markets, electronic media, science, patents. And add to this the unique perpetual survival, and the evidence points to the fact that Jews, whether by birth or conversion, or even those who simply share similar inclinations, are the function of hubs in the human network. And here's the kicker. It's an integral, holistic system. So every human being in the system carries within them both qualities, hub and node, the Jew function and the Gentile function, operating in and around them. So, do Jews know that this is what they are? Very, very few would. And considering the state of the world, unlike in the past, our hubs are barely able to maintain the existence of the system. So, no, the Jew function is sleeping. They're just as confused as everyone else as to what they are, what their role is, what purpose they serve in the system, and why they exert so much influence and attract so much hatred. Jews are a kind of nation of hubs in their human network, structured so that any major or minor impulse of system development that enters the system has to first go through the hubs, through the Jew function. For that to happen, Jews have to connect in a way that resembles the higher quality of the system where those impulses originate. They have to connect up in an open, inclusive, mutually responsive, altruistic way, sort of quantum love your neighbor as yourself program, a conduit made of human unity designed to minimize the resistance to impulses entering the system while maximizing the spread of awareness and new ideas to every node. A natural inborn grasp of what next steps to take in order to ensure the survival of the system. Where do these impulses come from anyway? Since we're always evolving and complexifying, it appears that the human network exists and is expanding in a system of higher quality that we're constantly growing into. What are nature's messages? Well, they're the same in all scale-free networks. Connect and make whole. Nature evolves its parts to handle more connection, making them more useful to the system and able to receive much more benefit from each enhancement. And according to the new science, connection aimed at greater states of unity may be the prime directive of the system. Well, at least that's what hubs are supposed to do. But when they don't, or when they act like nodes, a built-in alarm goes off. Every node feels there's something wrong and demands what's missing. The nodes, the Gentile function, unconsciously sense that development and well-being are being choked off and the whole system's in danger. These responses are autonomic, mechanical. The Gentile function is triggered by the system to send alarm signals, pinging the hubs, like, go to work, do something, we're suffering here. In the human system, this takes the form of demand and anger aimed at the Jews. I mean, a hatred that outwardly seems completely irrational, but inwardly is totally justified. It's anti-Semitism. That's what's going on right now. Chaos and planet-wide problems. The fear that we feel for our survival is simply happening because of our inability to keep up with the accelerating global interdependence that we're already into. It simply demands a higher form of unity with greater intensity from the hubs. Otherwise, there is no future. Otherwise, we're unable to develop the ideas that we need in order to steer the system into a higher state of organization. That's what we need to do. So how do we fix that? Let me paint you a picture. Unity is the prime directive. Every time we hit a crossroads, it's immediately met by subconscious system-wide directive to unite. Now, this unity can happen in one of two ways. If unity is initiated by the cohesive function, the Jew function, we expand through free will. Voluntary agreement coming from the concern for all the parts. Progress, we get an enhancement of quality and sustainability. But if the expansive function moves towards unity first, we get empires. National unity based on force, pitting race and religion against each other. An expansion of quantity, fascism, war, genocide. Yeah, let's look at genocide. The whole point of having hubs in the system in the first place is to evolve nodes into hubs. No matter how powerful or legitimate the claim is against a faltering Jew function, genocide simply can't work. It's impossible to fix the problem of underperforming hubs by destroying them. It makes the system collapse. Just look at the history book to see what happened in the places that try that. Hubs cannot be replaced en masse, or really at all, because hubs are how nature evolves nodes to become hubs. Get it? And what would we replace them with? Gentile and Jew functions aren't self-appointed roles, they're products of natural structures. Any group of nodes that would imagine it could work in some other way that opposes how nature works just plain isn't a hub. That's why there are always Jews, and that's what Jews are to us. The Jewish problem isn't one of race, religion, nationality, culture. No, it's simply an integral part of the system. It's this deeply programmed need to ensure its survival, which motivates a suspicion and hatred towards the Jews. The only way, but I mean the only way to fix it, is to understand ourselves. All that's missing now is that human quality, is a conscious volitional agreement of all the parts in the system to develop by fulfilling their roles.